We touched on the concept of components in the last video, but I want to continue to build on that knowledge in this video. A component is a piece that makes up a game object and gives it some sort of functionality. There are many categories of components, each of which add to a different type of functionality that a game object may possess. For example, physics components add functionality that controls how physics affects the object and collides with other objects. Take the following example. If I select my cube game object, I go over here in the inspector to add component, physics, and then rigid body. I've just added a rigid body to my cube game object, which adds a number of physical functionalities to this object. Two very important functionalities are that it gives this object a mass recognized within the game, currently that is set to 1. Also, use gravity is currently enabled. Now you'll see that when I hit play and enter play mode, you'll see that the cube falls. So you'll see that every time you add a component, it will have some sort of effect on the game object that you add it to. Additionally, audio components allow the object to listen for or trigger sound effects. Each type of component adds its own unique functionality to a game object. In order for us to add components to our game objects, as I showed before, we would go to Add Component, and we would select the category of component that we wish to add. You can see that there are a number of different categories, each of which has its own importance and purpose within the game engine. You'll see that some of our categories include effects that we can add to our objects, physics, depending on whether you want to use 3D physics or 2D physics. You'll also see we can add audio components to it, and as I said, this includes an audio listener, which would listen for an audio event, an audio source, which is a source of audio, which would play a certain sound from this game object's location. We also have a variety of other components that we can use to our advantage within the game engine. Essentially, each of these components adds its own functionality to our game objects and helps them to be more defined within the game engine. If we were to remove all of these components from our cube, we would just have this three-dimensional cube in the game world doing nothing, just sitting there in space. But once we add these components, we can make our cube collide with other objects, be visible and invisible within the game world, and have a mass that is identified by the game world, along with enabling gravity to act on our object. In later tutorials, we will explore more uses of components. Components are an essential part of the Unity game engine, as they give game objects their functionality.